Why am I me? Why are you you? I'm sure many of you have at some point in your life wondered why you are you. Why are you the particular person you are, stuck in the particular body that you have? If you're anything like me, you'll have a strong sense of me-ness that marks you out from everyone else and everything else in the rest of the universe. But then why did this me have to be in the person that it did? Couldn't it have ended up in someone else? The first thing we have to address is whether this is even an interesting or proper philosophical question, or just some sort of basic misunderstanding. For example, when you're watching a horse, I doubt if you've ever wondered why it isn't a goose instead. The question just seems to make no sense, or is at least completely uninteresting. So why is it any different for your own identity? And what does it even mean to be someone else? If you suddenly swapped your entire identity with someone else, say Damon Hill, what would happen? Well, if it happened properly, you'd get his physical body in its current physical location, with all of his thoughts, memories, etc., and you wouldn't retain any of your own, so you wouldn't notice that any swap had taken place. And neither would Damon Hill, who gets your life in exchange, with all your thoughts and memories, etc. Both people involved would carry on with life as if nothing had happened, except of course that we know that you are now Damon Hill, and Damon Hill is now you. If someone told you that your identities had been swapped, you'd probably think that they were mad. You would claim to have always been Damon Hill. So what is there to your identity above and beyond your thoughts, feelings and all your physical attributes? Because to be able to make this swap, it seems as though there has to be some non-physical thing, your me-ness, that can just swap between people, despite apparently not actually having any measurable function. After the swap, it would appear to everyone and every type of measuring device that nothing has actually changed. So the whole question must be rubbish then. Sorted. But I don't think that answers everyone's intuitions. You know, why am I me? If your identity is just a brute fact, then it certainly seems that it doesn't make any sense to talk about good or bad luck regarding your identity, that you could have been born with any better attributes. Well, obviously, we could get into a more detailed discussion about what the defining properties of you are. Presumably you are more cognitively advanced and stronger now than when you were born, and most people would probably consider themselves to be the same self, to have the same identity. So perhaps some things can change within a given identity or self. I'm not going to go into personal identity in great detail now, but that's all in my book. But certainly, if we're taking our identity as a brute fact, then it would make no sense to talk about probabilities when it comes to your core identity. But this can lead to odd conclusions, as you will see. One problem that physicists think about is Boltzmann brains, named after the Austrian physicist Ludwig Boltzmann. Boltzmann brains come from the idea that if you wait long enough, random fluctuations will cause an ordered state to form out of a disordered one. And if you wait a really long time, a fully formed, self-aware brain will just pop into existence. This is the Boltzmann brain. And this brain could pop into existence experiencing just anything. These experiences don't have to reflect the goings-on in the outside world at all. It's generally assumed that we're not Boltzmann brains. If you were a Boltzmann brain, the perceived order in your universe is extremely unlikely to continue for any amount of time, and Boltzmann brains experiencing incoherent nonsense would by far outnumber ones that appear to be experiencing an ordered world. But Boltzmann brains are a problem for physicists. They really want it to be the case that normal brains that come into existence normally outnumber Boltzmann brains. So when theories of physics are developed, they often take this into account. The thinking is that if Boltzmann brains outnumber normal brains, most observers will be these Boltzmann brains. So we must be incredibly lucky not to be Boltzmann brains. Or we could actually be these Boltzmann brains, and we wouldn't be able to trust our experiences or perceptions as based in anything real. But actually this line of reasoning doesn't hold if we are writing off probability in personal identity. I am who I am, and that's just a brute fact. it makes no sense to say I could have been a Boltzmann brain if I'm not one, and it makes no sense to say I could have been a normal brain if I am a Boltzmann brain. So the ratio of one to the other doesn't really matter, whether it's 10 to the power of a trillion Boltzmann brains per normal brain, or the same in the other direction. So I could just be, as a brute fact of my identity, a Boltzmann brain, or the mind that arises from one, and all my experiences and memories just illusory. If I am a Boltzmann brain, then my experiences just happen to fit in fairly coherently with the existence of some particular outside world, because that's just a brute fact of my identity. If that is the case, I can't trust any of my experiences of this outside world, nor can I trust any knowledge I've gained, or any of science. It's all just random stuff that has come about from the random configuration of my brain. Of course, there's no way of knowing definitively whether I am actually a Boltzmann brain, but if there's no way of even assigning a probability to it either, then we can't say anything about the likelihood of whether our experiences truly reflect the outside world. So we cannot really trust anything. So I would argue that to write off as meaningless the question, why am I me, is to write off science and all of our knowledge of the outside world. But I don't write off science as untrustworthy, nor do I write off the outside world generally. This is why I do think it makes sense to talk in statistical and probabilistic terms when it comes to personal identity. I would say that I am me because it is statistically fairly likely that a conscious mind, picked at random, would be something like a human being living on planet Earth in the year 2016. Well, that probably needs further qualification. Looking at just Earth for now, if we accept that other animals are conscious too, then humans would only make up a very small proportion of the conscious beings on this planet. But in the same way that we couldn't have been a rock because it's not conscious, I would argue that we're also very unlikely to have been an ant because it's got such a small amount of consciousness. The point is that if you take not a random conscious being, but a random point in what I call consciousness space, then this would increase the probability of finding yourself in the mind of an intelligent being. This is because more cognitively advanced beings would take up a larger area in consciousness space than less cognitively advanced beings. Whether this redresses the balance enough is open to question, but it could probably be tested. We need an objective measure of consciousness, but this is likely to be proportional to something like cognitive power. So the hypothesis would be that human consciousness takes up a large enough area in consciousness space so that if you take a random point in consciousness space, finding a human mind would be reasonably likely. The higher the better, but above 5 or 10% would at least make it not a freak chance. But then, what about the fact that you are not only a human, but a human in the year 2016, or whatever year it is now for you watching this? Well, there might not be anything special about the year 2016 specifically, but if we're treating you as a random slice of consciousness, then you're more likely to exist at a time when there are more conscious beings around. The human population has gone up by several orders of magnitude over the last few thousand years, so you're more likely to exist in 2016 than, say, 20,000 BC. But then, if the population is growing and we expect humans to carry on into the distant future, why 2016 and not 3016 or even later? Well, actually there is something called the doomsday argument, originally proposed by astrophysicist Brandon Carter. This basically says that you should reason that you are probably in about the middle of the number of humans who will ever exist. You've only got a 5% chance of being in the first 5% of humans, so there must be about a 95% chance that humanity will die out before there have been about 20 times as many humans as there have been so far. There are arguments for and against this, but it's certainly something to think about. But of course, I'm not actually just talking about humans here, but conscious beings generally. So the argument that we're about halfway through the stock of humans is not the relevant thing here. The equivalent argument for consciousness generally would be that we're about halfway through consciousness time on Earth. This is arguably similar, but it would take into account the future existence of super-intelligent computers, or augmenting our own intelligence so that the intelligence of normal humans is dwarfed, so that we would be how ants are to us when compared to these beings. But if we do achieve such advances, and they last for a reasonable amount of time, you'd expect that they should dominate consciousness space-time on Earth. And yet I am me, and you are you, normal, unaugmented human beings. So this could be taken as an argument against our future successes in this domain. If we are a typical point in consciousness space-time, then we also have to look beyond Earth. Of course, it could be that intelligent life doesn't exist beyond Earth, in which case nothing changes. But if it does, then this line of reasoning would lead us to believe that human-level intelligence is common enough on alien planets, so that less intelligent life forms don't dominate consciousness space-time. And also more intelligent beings resultant from better technology don't dominate either. That's largely it. You can take the rigid view that I am me and you are you, because these are just brute and obvious facts, and wondering why makes no sense, like wondering why a horse is not a goose. But we can take the arguably more nuanced view that we are who we are because we are relatively typical points in consciousness space-time. Effectively, human-level intelligence living on planets like Earth make up quite a large proportion of the universe's conscious experience. Obviously that doesn't say why I'm specifically me, or why you are specifically you, rather than either of us being Damon Hill, but that's just down to chance. Thank you for watching my video. If you enjoyed it, you can subscribe to my channel. Even better, you can buy my book, Stuff and Consciousness, Connecting Matter and Mind, by me, Toby Pereira. It's all about how your seemingly non-physical thoughts and feelings can come from your physical brain. It's available in paperback and also on Kindle. Links are available in the video description below, or you can visit my website at www.tobypereira.co.uk. Thank you.